me and you have known each other for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
And this podcast came about me and you discussing the dark night of the soul that you went through, which was very intense.
Yeah.
And as two guys who've been on a spiritual path for a long time, we kept hitting on similar notes about what happens when this dark night of the soul comes. When, in your beautiful words, the adolescent ego rebels against the divine.
Mm-hmm.
So if you would like, I'd love for you to share your process of what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And, the intense energies that you had to endure.
Yeah. Well, I'd been a counselor, a teacher. I'd be guiding large meditations and channeling and doing all sorts of work. And I was in a point of my work and my life where my connection to my guide, to my, to what I perceived as the spiritual realm around me was very strong. And I was really sharing it with people and working with it. And it's funny because it was around early 2012. And I was channeling all this stuff about, the famous, what was it, December 2012 when the Mayan calendar, everything blew up, or the meteorite. But, through channelings and meditations, thing came out that, prepare, because there's going to be an energetic shift and it's going to be intense. And if we're not ready to let go, it's really going to hit us hard. And, I never thought that would involve me in first person, obviously.
You're the one they're looking
exactly for. Exactly. I was the one the message was for. So when that hit, it was at the end of an intense relationship, and I realized, just later how much undiagnosed depression and anxiety I had, and that was the moment where it all came back. And all of a sudden, I found myself in huge desperation and pain and sense of profound loss and hopelessness. And there was nothing from the other side coming through. I would pray, I would meditate, I would try to re-evoke that connection that I once had, but it wasn't there. So the desperation grew only wider. And those years, because it was initially weeks, then it became months, and then it became, 2 straight years of that, dark night, that I came to a point where I was, you know what? Fuck you. I worked for you all these years, and whoever you are, you're nowhere to be heard, seen, or found, from my perspective at least. So you know what? This is the moment I felt I needed you most, and you weren't there. So it was like, that's it. Whatever that's it is, because there was so much behind the that's it. But it was like, you know what? I'm not your friend anymore. I'm not your ally anymore. And what happened in those times was that I really turned to human beings rather than spirituality, which was something I tended to avoid because I didn't really trust relationships. I didn't really trust humans. And my spirituality was my safe haven where I could, be safe in that space and not have to deal that much with humans. But that was the space where I actually rediscovered relationships with human beings. And what helped me out of my dark night of the soul was exactly that. Relationship with human beings, the closest friends I had, and my father, my mother not being there anymore, just standing by my side, helping me through. You helped me a lot at that time. So it was really people who helped me make the shift, helped me get out of where I was and get back on my feet.
Beautiful. And, it's been now 12 years. I remember when you're going through the throes of it. And, you're in Milano, I'm in New York, but we were connecting by phone and video. The terror was intense. I mean, the level of anxiety, people really don't appreciate the level of anxiety and panic that we all have, that we shove down with all the addictions that we do, food and drugs and sex and busyness, really. But it really broke through where you couldn't repress it and suppress it. But, it was you were dying on a daily basis. It was literally the death terrors coming up over you, and it was over and over. I mean, the horrendous aspect of it, it breaks my heart even to now thinking of you and thinking of all the people that I have had the privilege of sitting next to who go through this. It's no joke how intense it is. And the thing that me and you always talk about, you as a healer, me as a healer, both of us, we have solid decades under our belts of this desperation. Is literally the human condition till it's faced. It's people can be struggling about money or a heartbreak or job or be on top of the world, quote unquote, in an egoistic way. This is sort of simmering underneath there, right? There's really this fear constantly of what do we do? What is, let me move. So it has to get hammered into us. No one goes to this willingly, in my experience.
Yeah.
Maybe a Ramana Maharshi, the one person we can read about at 16 has an awakening and then, blows this up. For the rest of us, it's a process, and it's just piece by piece by piece.
Yeah.
And, you said when we were preparing for this, you said some really profound things. And one of the things that I love that you said, it's really the adolescent ego having to be forfeited to have a real experience. And, the divine, whatever word we want to use for it, is really the parental projection of whatever we haven't healed. It's that thing, and when things are going well, it's really great. Daddy loves me, mommy loves me, whatever the story is. And then when it doesn't go well, it's the big middle finger to the divine. And my experience with a lot of people, a lot of the new agey stuff, it's literally just covering that simmering anxiety, rage, things aren't going well. And, we want to will ourselves through it. We want to will ourselves through it. If I say enough mantras, if I meditate enough hours, if I,
Yeah.
And this is, again, the delineation between psychology and spirituality. There is a part of this that has to really be addressed through psychology, not just spirituality, or they have to be at least intermarried. So how would you say, in your experience, where was that? Where was that delineation? So when there was,
Well, first of all, I think that element of, as we were preparing for this, I realized that, basically our child ego is always there. The part that's stomping its feet, that's making demands, that's freaking out all the time, that's impatient, that's restless, that's the child needing to be soothed. And we don't really become adults. We get into that adolescent ego that gives us the illusion of control, of having figured it out. If I do this, then this will happen. It's that attempt to have an antidote to the terror of not having the slightest control over our lives. So I think that the time where that shifted was when everything was taken away from me, quote unquote. I had nothing left. I had nothing left because I had to give up my work. I had to refer all my clients. I had to give up my house. I wasn't able to live by myself. I had to give up everything because I wasn't autonomous anymore. And I remember distinctly that moment where I was sitting in front of my father's fireplace, where I stayed for a number of months in the countryside, that I said, you know what? My house has crumbled down. I want to dig out the, what do you call them? Le fondamenta in Italian. It's the foundation.
The foundation. Yeah.
I want to dig that out because I feel I've built on something that's not solid. And that obviously made it even more terrifying because I had nothing. I decided intentionally not to cling to false beliefs because if it wasn't true, if it wasn't really true, it's not a matter of faith. because faith is not true. It's something that we choose to believe in. It's not concrete. And we might be being of lights. We might be, sparks of the divine, but fuck that. When we're fully in our human being, we don't feel that. We need a hug. We need someone in front of us to touch, to feel, because it's not the same thing as going into meditation and feeling cosmic love. I really needed that. My inner child really needed that. So the moment I decided to give up anything that wasn't concrete, the concrete to build the foundations with was anything that wasn't like that, I wanted to give up. I surrendered. I said, no, I don't want to cling on to that anymore. And I feel that was the moment.
Well, I love what you're saying, right? Me and you always talk about this. Beliefs are so dangerous. Like my experience of being around the suffering and people, young men dying of AIDS in their 20s. And, belief, you have to know. And knowledge comes through hard work, which is really suffering. Belief, you can believe all kinds of things. And again, this is the sandcastle that we build over and over with belief systems. Yeah. They're really Band-Aids on these festering wounds. The festering wound has to be tended to, which is what you were forced to do.
Yeah.
Really interesting sitting with you now. I have so much love for you, and you really are my brother. There's such a sense of you living in the question. If I could put the energy as you're talking, I'm sitting and feeling you thousands of kilometers away. And it's like, what is it? I'm like, this is like, I've always known this guy, but there's a softness in you. And in that softness is such a strength, right? A tree has a different kind of strength than a piece of board. The wood that's been cut and chopped and dried, it's very strong. At some point it will break. A tree has a different kind of strength. And my experience of you in this moment is you went from the trauma of a child of having to dry the tree of your life, replanting it and becoming this pliable tree. And there's just a softness in that. And there's an energy where it's not this absolute. When we're in the absolute, I know everything. I know that rigidity is terror.
Yeah.
There's a real vulnerability, which is actually strength. But initially, it feels like weakness. And it's so wild, just seeing you and feeling you in this state, which if we told the old Ian of 12, 13 years ago, hey, he would jump out the window if he met this guy. How are you living like this? What do you mean living in a question? What do you mean you're giving up spirituality? But we know we're divine children. Everything is God. It's like, yes, and there's the humanity of it.
Yeah.
You said something really beautiful. We talked about this. You said something. You said, are you here to transcend your humanity through spirituality, or is spirituality a way into fully experience your humanity? Are you here to transcend your humanity through spirituality, or spirituality a way into fully experiencing your humanity? Most people are in the first, till suffering brings them into the latter. You want to just put this into also the framework of Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of what happens? Just describe that. What is that?
Yeah.
5 stages of grieving, right?
Yeah. The 5 stages of grief. And what I don't think we realize that we're constantly in one of these states. The main tool of spirituality that we use it for. I mean, we get close to spirituality when we're suffering. So 100%. Spirituality is a tool to get out of suffering, and after a while, meditation might be good, there might be things, or just time passing, the suffering might decrease, and it's like, oh, okay, so this is my anchor, this is my lifesaver. And we use spirituality, the spiritual bypass you talk so much about is like using spirituality to get out of the suffering, to get out of our human being, of being human. And so in a way, it's always that either I'm angry, like the 5 stages of grief, or I'm desperate, or I'm in denial, or I'm scared shitless, or I'm bargaining, I'll pray more, I'll meditate more. So we got a deal. And it's always that thing. And it's then there's the depression when you realize none of this works. And that's that's a dark moment. That's a dark moment we all go through. And even acceptance isn't
Which is
bliss.
That's beautiful, well said.
Acceptance is, okay.
You're pummeled into it. You get pummeled into acceptance,
you get
right?
pummeled into surrender, like you say and repeat so many times.
Yeah. That's the part that's really not sexy when spirituality doesn't want to stretch it as it is. And I love what you say. It really is that. Spirituality is the invitation. But the denial in our culture is huge. The anger is really huge.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The bargaining is really huge. We're always doing that piece, and then the depression is huge.
Yeah.
But those are the first 4 stages. And a lot of us just get stuck there because we don't realize the acceptance is the next piece.
Yes.
So interesting too, this thing, the invitation to be human. It's wild how what's happening culturally now, people don't really realize this whole transhumanism that's being offered.
Yeah.
And what is transhumanism, right? When Carl Schwab says, hey, we're going to take your brain, have it an algorithm in a computer, and you can live on. Literally, the level of suffering is so much that we want to disembody so much, to take ourselves and put ourselves in a machine, because we don't want to have the human experience. And we are stepwalking into this reality without accepting that actually there's another way. Right? So this, again, where is the soul in that? Where is the suchness of the moment? That's a level of pain we're in.
Yeah.
When you see the craziness that's happening with the overlords, let's say, this is not some political issue. This is just a magnified version of everything you're talking about.
Yeah.
If we don't want to hold our humanity, then we destroy environment. We destroy each other.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it's so painful to be here that we want to transcend it. But that's not transcendence. That's just denial. Right? Again, the thing of...
Yeah. I mean, it's fascinating while horrifying to see the lengths human beings will go not to feel their pain and terror.
Beautiful. There you go. Now you said it. This is the length. And we've never had the technology at our fingertips to be this disconnected. Right? So even I forget about putting your brain into algorithm, even for an Ian, given all the social media that's available on his computer and all this stuff and the porn and all the things that people use, it would have been very easy for you not to answer the call. And in my experience of a clinician for 4 decades, boy, does the knock get louder.
Yeah.
And there is something happening now where we're like, it's time. So the thing that you were channeling, that was truth. Of there's an awakening going on. Hey, we forget that, it's me and you too. It's not just, damn it.
You poor idiots, prepare yourselves.
That's amazing. Totally. It's like, it's the populace.
Yeah.
But yeah, the beautiful thing is that is an invitation right now.
Yeah.
Right? That's an invitation. And really the gift that we give, and I want to bring it back to the personal, but you as a healer, right? Someone who's served so many people so kindly and so generously, and I know how generous you are with your time and your spirit and the ways you've helped me all these years. You're an amazing auto engineer. That's how we met. And you would freely, put all this energy and time and hours to perfect these podcasts. I mean, the level of love you put into these things was really like astounding. That energy now is also coming back to you. That energy has to come back to you. The level of generosity of self and generosity of spirit. That's also a part of it. Now, taking it to a personal, the reason me and you were sharing this is because we're both seeing it with our patients, with our clients. There is something happening here. And the old ways aren't working. This is sort of the addict at his end point. Yes, now we can put on the goggles for $3,500 and, while we're having these experiences. And like, again, that's your path, no judgment. What we're saying is, here's also an invitation. And we're also saying, it's scary. We're also saying, there's really no option.
Yeah.
Either you answer it now, or it beats down your door like the SWAT team. It's not an option not to answer it. You can always delay it. But the delaying, there's interest accrued that has to be paid back. Right? So first is the letter, then it's the phone call, then it's the police knocking on your door, and then it's like your stuff's getting thrown on the street. So does that make sense to you?
It does make sense. And then again, we're not trying to terrify anybody, but I would say that, I hated it when it happened, but that was a blessing in disguise. It sounds cheesy, but that's what it was. And it doesn't always happen. Sometimes we're so good and we're so attached to the status quo that we don't want to make it happen. So in a way, there has to be, and oh yeah, I remember now. It was incredible. It was that summer. It was the summer before I was watching the NBA playoffs. And there was this coach whom I think is a spiritual teacher other than being a coach, who's Greg Popovich of the San Antonio Spurs. And his team has always been so humble. And during an interview, when they were saying, how did you achieve this? How? And he said, these men have gotten over themselves. And when I heard that, I was watching the game finished. I was at the seaside and was just sitting alone in the night. And I expressed this specific request.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Help me get over myself. I explicitly asked for that. And then it literally hit the fan a few months later. I did ask for that.
So this is the thing that's so profound. First of all, even more profound, Italian watching NBA. Just can't make this shit up. Football fan.
Yeah.
But we'll put that aside for now.
Yeah.
This is so profound when you say you asked that, because I've been in that place myself. It really is your spirit asking it. The ego would never ask that. The soul, whatever language, the unconscious knows, right?
Yeah.
And the thing that I've learned to do, although people like me, when you get pummeled because we're so strong, it really needs to be difficult.
Yeah.
But it's amazing that you're having that memory. I've had the same experience in India, being in a temple and burn away whatever doesn't serve me. And literally had a nervous breakdown 2 months later. And, it's good to say do it gently. But also there's a part where we know, someone like me or you, where, the ego never wants to be in that much pain. But we know it has to get hit in the head with a 2x4. Because otherwise, as you said earlier, we can refortify the ego and fight it.
Yeah.
So I always do this thing now when I work with people. I'm like, this is a good way. Hey, burn away what doesn't serve me gently.
Yeah.
But I say that to people because having suffered, but also know for your experience, having observed it now and experience, having been there 20 whatever years ago, it really is no other way till it comes that way. And to your point, no, we're not trying to scare people, but I'm seeing a lot of people living in desperation under the guise of this is life. And I get it. You're taking care of your kids or your dog or your parents or trying to rub 2 cents together to pay your rent. I appreciate all that. I'm just saying this whole thing goes by really quickly. And there is something afoot that is an invitation. It doesn't have to be mine and your level of experience. Me and you both are very traumatic childhoods and very, very traumatized. But we're saying even if it's not that extreme, it's an invitation.
Yeah.
And again, the person who's going to listen to this conversation is going to be someone on some level. There's something that's going to resonate. If it scares the hell out of you, you're going to turn this off and not listen to it. But far from frightening to me, again, would I want to see you go through this again or myself? Not at all. But the person that I see sitting in front of me is the person that I'm way happier for than the person of 15 years ago, for both of us. For me, I'm older than you, so for me, it happened around the same age as you, but older. It really, there was a lot of pain, right? There was just this rigidity of just going through life with everything, willpower.
Yeah.
There's just a flowing with it, right? But there's also so much more joy, just the way you beautifully cried. Like I remember before that, all those years I've known you, I've never seen you cry. And then we were talking, you were just this beautiful, soft energy. And you're a badass, you're a fierce soul. You're a true man in the best sense of the word. But the softness is what makes you that even more. The kindness was there externally. When I feel that of you, that emotion that comes up, that's such a kindness towards your little boy. It's not shut the F up, which is what we all do, but it's the softness when a little boy comes up and you hold him. And I hold him with you. And we hold, right? It's that energy too. There's a humanity in that.
Yeah. Yeah. And
so what would you say? Go ahead.
Yeah, and that's exactly what you kept repeating to me throughout the years when we talked. You would keep reminding me, be gentle to yourself, be gentle. Because something that people constantly come to session with is, I want to resolve this. People want to resolve themselves. They don't want to embrace whatever is going on. They want to get rid of it. And we all do to a certain level. You know, even now I have to remind myself when pain, when discomfort comes along, you know, I don't embrace it immediately. The first thing is like, okay, what can I take? Is there a pill for this? But eventually, you know, it's really about embracing. And that's the most important thing. The child within ourselves, which is always there and needs to be soothed on a regular basis. We need to soothe that child. We need to embrace that. We need to softly acknowledge the fact that there's a hurting part of ourselves and accept the fact that pain, that terror is always there, you know, is always latent, and live with it rather than overcome, live without fear. No, good luck with that. You'll always be pushing it away. As soon as it comes there, you go into rigidity. You go into, no. I'm, you know, I'm a being of light, you know, it's, that's that constant denial. So yeah,
it's a drug, right? Thinking is a drug too. So that kind of spiritual bypass is a drug. It shifts, right? Kicks in a dopamine that I'm God, which actually God is us. We're not God if you use that language, but I love what you're saying. And we want to, and that, to also make room even for that part of it. That's part of the human experience. We don't necessarily want to feel it, but there's also an aspect of our culture now where everything is pushed away. Like immediately there's some discomfort. There's a pill, there's a thing, do this, there's some practice. Just sitting with it. And this also brings me to this point that we had discussed. There is a compass. Even though it seems like we're really lost, there is a compass in this. And the compass is not what we think it is. It's internal as opposed to external, right? And it gets shown moment to moment. The first time when you had the panic attack and you're paralyzed, and then it gets worse and you have to move in with your father where you can't even take care of yourself. But there is a compass there. And that compass takes care of you. There is a divinity there in that energy, which is the human part, which is very confusing to the mind. Right? I always used to talk about this back in the day when I would sit people, when they would talk about the divine, they would point up. Everything is that monkey brain wanting to jump the hell out of the body and go up, right? I want to leave. Your experience was you had to do this. Or literally had no choice because, as you said, lay in front of the fireplace. There was no jumping out. There was the body was like taking command of you. Right? And this suit is 2 million years old. It has a wisdom in it. Its brain is 200 years old, right? So that's where it takes over. I just remember something too. I remember sending you some herbs to help with your anxiety, and then through the crazy Italian post office, getting customs and all that nightmare reading return. And I remember getting the lesson of like, of course, you're my brother. I want to like help somewhat with this feeling. And then it was like, wow, even that's not allowed. And, you know, I'd been, a family in Italy. I'd be sending them herbs. And this one time. And I got, it was a whole thing. I remember 2 times I tried to send it. I was like, wow, now I need to listen and be like, okay, he's helped. And we can put that in shit happens and Italian customs. We can also be like, damn, I've done that so many times. Always went through this one time. Like, what the hell? It was like, this is like something was being burned off there, right? It's really, really profound, the level of suffering.
And that element of compass really resonates because I always make this analogy where we are used today to having as much control as we can. So we love our apps for navigation. You know, the app is going to tell us how long it's going to take, where we are moment by moment, and what the traffic is like and whatnot. So control, beautiful. But a compass just says that way. That's it. And it's terrifying because when it's night and it says that way, you don't know where you are. You don't know where you're going. You don't know when you'll get where. But that's the nature of the compass. You know, that's part of the terror that we have to live with. And terror doesn't mean that we have to be in panic all the time. Terror means it's that state of mind where our mind says, we don't know where we are. We don't know where we're going. Are you sure you want to do that? That's the terror. And trusting, faith is trust to me. Is
Yes.
saying, okay, I trust my heart, which is my compass. And
Yes.
if it says that way, if it says in the darkest moment of my life to dig up the foundation and build a new one, I just feel that's where I need to be and need to go. And, I trust it. It feels horrible. It feels terrifying. I feel completely lost, but, that's the trust in your own compass.
And that faith that you're talking about beautifully, it really is about experientially being proven that it's real. It's not just the faith of the spirituality or the book, it's direct experience, right? You as an audio engineer, you can have faith that you can take our work today and do your typical, incredibly impeccable editing. That faith is because of experience. You've done that a gazillion times. So now you're going to handle it. Whatever happens, you can handle it. So that faith also is very important to realize. It denotes an experience. It's not just faith. I can have faith that I can edit this like Ian and it'll be a shit show because I don't have experience of it. So that surrendering we're talking about, that faith actually gets fed. It becomes a direct experiential. It's not just a mental concept like a belief system. But that's also very powerful. What I've seen with a lot of faith is unless one has that direct experience, it's still a thought form. It's not direct experience. So interesting about this app thing you're talking about too. So much of what's happening culturally now, we, because we're so anxious, want to give our agency away to these apps. Like a guy like me, who's literally traveled so many continents on a motorcycle, reading a paper map. Africa and Asia and, America and North America and Mexico, literally using a paper map. It's so wild when I see these apps that I have on my own phone sometimes. I used to start using them. I just just backwards. I live in a country, moved to a new house. Like I don't know places. Instead of trusting my intuition, I would just, because of the anxiety, unconsciously just put this app on. I'm like, what are you doing, dude? Like, it's amazing how easy it is to give away agency. As opposed to like, hey, let's just experience. You're not in a rush today. Let's really explore this local country roads. Let's use our intuition after 45 years of riding motorcycles. Where's north? Where's south? It's amazing how even in little ways we give agency over, right? It's constant. We do that emotionally. We do that even something as simple as some navigational app. It's again about taking that and going inside. Because all day long, since information is the new commodity, is the new oil, with our phones and with this, we're constantly being seduced to give away agency internally, right? Again, what you went through would have been very easy to go into this world outside of yourself. In the old days, it would be a book or the fireplace or a magazine. Now it's like 10 million different ways. And then these powers, the commercial interests, like, come on, Ian, come on in here. Come on, this is a good road for you. So that's a very powerful thing. We have to learn how to hold our own company. You were forced into it. I was forced into it. But even for those of us who are good with that, this dark night of the soul has a requirement to meet this person. And that person is amazing. It's yourself. But we've become such strangers to her or him that we don't actually connect with it. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And I really, really like, and it's counterintuitive, what you just said about faith, which is a muscle that you can, train. Usually faith is like, always that leap of faith. It's like, I don't know, I'm just going to jump. Something might happen. Something good might happen. But faith, intuition, are muscles you can train. You can practice being intuitive, but not like, oh, I feel that your kidney has something. It's really about, trusting with my own life, with life choices, with, I'm going to trust myself with this. And I'm not saying that practice makes perfect. I'm saying that the more you practice, the more you trust yourself with it. And you start relying inwardly more than outwardly. As apps or anything else, I want to trust myself first. But if I haven't practiced trusting myself enough, then I'm not really going to trust myself that much. Yeah.
And that muscle you're describing is also learning to tolerate these feelings. So the anxiety is brutal, it's frightening. And the more one can even take, it doesn't have to be this intense thing, that me and you went through. If we spend a couple of minutes a day of just grounding and feeling what it is, because everyone has this profound anxiety right below the surface. That actually then helps you tolerate bigger and bigger chunks when they come up, and also allows you to transmute it by just being present to it. There's nothing that needs to be done. People think I got to do something. You just got to sit and feel. We can meditate. I treat people who meditate all day long, literally people back in the day would, as a way of spiritual bypass. Or we can just in the moment when we feel that thing, I got to move, just there, 30 seconds, sit. Boy, this feels funny. This feels, something's coming up. That energy is so profound. That practice is so profound. It's not, again, I got to sit 2 hours a day. Even these momentary breaks. I feel I got to move, sit for a minute, feel, breathe, posture alignment, and then move. That gives us a tool that actually then comes in handy, right? And it's, again, being present to the moment. This, again, as you said, it's like, sounds like a cliche. We're never here.
Yeah.
Part of this terror that's here, right? For me and you have these profound breakdowns, even with all the spiritual practice we did, spiritual practice was getting ready for it, was a preparation, but also it's something that has to be tonified, and not as a way of going up or above, by just sitting in it and with it, right? And just what happened now, you were talking, the emotions come up, you feel it, you process it, back. It's not that it stays in that heightened place.
Yeah.
So that invitation is also moment to moment. So one thing I want to offer, as I always talk about in all the talks that I do, is as we're speaking right now, bring the energy down, right? Whoever's listening to us. Me and you did this before we started speaking. You drop the breathing down. You feel the feet, the chin goes in. Back of the neck elongates towards the ceiling. So we're downward, we're upward, and then we expand into the room. And then you're already there, I'm already there. Invitation to our listeners and viewers, and then go from there.
Yeah. And at the same time, I always invite people to be human in that. We all go through a lot of shit. And many times, you don't have to stay with it all the time. It's okay, but be aware of when you need to, distract yourself, when you need to anesthetize yourself. Watch 2 episodes of your favorite series. It's fine. It's fine. We don't want to be too hard on ourselves that I have to be present. I have to be present. I have to be present, because, that's another way. To me, more important than being present is being loving. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Just be with yourself.
Beautiful.
Stay with yourself. Even if a friend's in pain, you can go to their place and watch a movie together. You don't have to stay there, just stare each other in the eyes and what are you feeling? How deep is it? It's okay. It's okay. We do. It's necessary to distract ourselves, but be aware. How much are you distracting yourselves? What are you using to distract yourself? Is there a healthier way you can distract yourself? It's okay if you need to distract yourself. If you don't want to stay with that too much, it's fine. But be aware. Don't be running away from it, because then you invest a ton of energy in something else.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
So to me, being present is being loving. So that's a great differentiation you're making. For me, the being present is being loving. It's not this stare down. And I love what you're saying, too, to be aware when we're distracting. It's all about awareness. To me, those words are interchangeable. Loving self, awareness, presence. Loving happens, grace happens in the moment, in my experience, at least being aware of it. But I love what you're saying, too. Yeah, it's not that, both me and you have the Zen background, sit down, not that. It's actually way, way more chill.
Yeah.
And then also, just as you're saying, always just awareness. That's all that's needed. This is too much now. I'm going to jump out the window. I need to go watch this, or I'm going to eat this. Pay attention.
Yeah.
Pay attention, right? It's just that awareness. Like, wow, this is intense. This is what needs to happen.
Yeah.
But then also roll it back a second. Wow, this came up. Is it internal? Is it because I talked to this person that's probably not good for me? Is it this job that's killing me? Just these momentary connections. And again, we're just collecting data points too. It's not just always this incredible willpower. The willpower is your enemy. This is about, as you say beautifully, kindness, which is really coming from a different places. And again, it's a surrender piece. And surrender, it's a dirty word when you're going through this. So either you get pummeled into it. Surrender as kindness towards self. But I love what you're saying, 100%.
Yeah.
Point well taken.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't want to open that whole chapter, but we all have that inner critic, that superego that wants to, doesn't want to be kind with us. It's, or rather, we have a very particular image of what the superego is or what the inner critic is, but it's trying to, do what's good for us the hard way. So it's like, no, you have to be present. The superego will try to be tough any way it can.
The fear.
Right. So it's really about being aware. Even we can be hard on ourselves while asking ourselves to be present. You're not present enough.
Absolutely.
So it's really about having that compass of kindness. Be kind. If you want to push yourself, push gently, but be kind and loving to yourself, like you would with the person you love most on this planet. Try doing that with yourself. And I mean, your heart guides you well. That's our compass. The heart never steers us in the wrong, quote unquote, direction. It never steers us against a wall. It's always soft. And it's really about learning to consult that voice, to hear that voice, which doesn't scream. It's really soft. It's really gentle. And it's never overpowering over the mind who screams its set off all the time.
It definitely whispers. It certainly whispers loudly.
Mm-hmm.
It whispers in a screaming voice if you tune into it, but it's a whisper. And your point again is really lovely. One can never underestimate the level of self-hatred.
Yeah.
Under the guise of, the planet could not be like this. We wouldn't treat each other. Now we work on it. But the self-hatred piece is really huge.
Yeah.
And anything can be used at its service. And at the end of the day, that part of the ego you're speaking about is terrified.
Yeah.
It's terrified because it knows it's not real. It knows it's a mask against deep insecurities, right? And again, it has to be very lovingly addressed and very lovingly approached.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is really big stuff here. Let's talk about that inner compass.
Mm-hmm.
So when this comes, for some people, heavy like me and you, for a lot of people, gently comes up. How would you, we've talked about it, but I just want to go into a little bit deeper. What would you say about that compass, that internal compass that guides us from the external voice, the ego voice, trying to make it happen voice, clenched fist voice? Talk about that. Well, when your own experience, what was that?
The greatest tool that I acquired during my years of training at the Barbara Brennan School of Healing, which was my formal training, and that's where I graduated from, was learning to distinguish between what I can't remember whether that's what we were taught, but this is how I remember it. Well, how I apply it today, there's mainly three voices that I can recognize that are constantly talking. The mind, the gut, and the heart. We tend to say that the heart and the instinct are the same thing, but really the gut is the instinct, is that survival. I would say it's the child in us. It's the part that's compulsive, that's reactive, that strives to survive. You die, I live, and whatnot. And that's the gut that steers us in certain directions and says certain things and makes us want to do some certain things. And then there's the mind. The mind, I would say, is the superego, the inner critic. I work a lot today with these three voices: the child, the superego, and the loving adult. And the third one, I would say, is the heart, which is the loving adult. So they all talk at the same time. They all have different agendas. And when they have the same agenda, they have different ways to go about it. But it's really about learning to listen. And I feel that there are, probably thousands of different kinds of meditation. But if I have to say what the most useful meditation is to just sit and listen. What's going on within myself? Who's talking? Because there's this constant series of voices expressing their idea of where we should be going all the time. It's really constant. And many times we give for granted that our mind, which is one that usually speaks the loudest, unless we have some situation where it's our belly, it's our gut saying, no, we have to do that. That's the woman for me, or that's the car I want. And it's really, go get it. But otherwise, it's the mind that disguises itself as the wise and the rational and the part of yourself that you want to follow. And it's really important to me in my experience, and especially with clients, I do that a lot. It's really learning to, even while they're speaking, okay, who says that? Which part of you is talking right now? Because within a sentence, there might be two voices, switching over. It's who rides the van, basically. Who's driving? Who's driving your van right now? Who's talking like that? Who's saying I have to go over this? And I keep going back to our conversations, I was like, and I still have these panic attacks and I'm still doing this. And you would say, okay, it's fine. It's okay. Soften up, be loving to that part, because it was, no, I have to fix this. We really want to fix this. The mind wants to fix. So in my experience, this inner compass, the one we want to listen to the most, is our heart, is the adult, loving parent within ourselves that guides us gently and lovingly. But we really need to become aware and recognize the tone of voice, whatever they look like, if we have to picture them, what our gut and what our inner judge look like and talk like.
What a beautiful differentiation. A lot of people, so the gut, a lot of people confuse these things and never go to the heart. So I love what you're saying. So, we know this, right? The gut is the original brain. The neuropeptides and all the stuff that are in the brain are actually in the gut. The gut was the original part. I love what you're saying, because the gut is that immediate survival part. The heart is actually the long-term, the big picture survival. And to just get out of the head, it's not enough, right? So the gut thing is immediate survival. Do this, do that. The heart is really laying out the big picture. That's really the big picture. And that's the part. And so many of us have heartbreak because we don't even realize it's a voice, right? So the first, and I love what you just said, the thing of breaking it down into those three distinct voices and just learning to differentiate them. And, the heart is not language. It's a knowingness. It's a feel. These words are very tricky. We know when it's the heart. Well, all I can say is that we know when it is, right? Yeah. And that, go ahead.
No, I was just, just.
So this differentiation is really, really important. And the fixing it part, it's when you're suffering, boy, you want to fix that thing. And that actually it's like opening a wound over and over. It actually doesn't let it heal. Mm-hmm. It's great to analyze. There's a time for analysis. There's a time for that. And there's a time for just making room for that little child without berating it.
Yeah.
Because that's how the child hears a lot of these things, is being berated. Right? Being berated. And if you have trauma in your past, either you deal with it as an adult by being someone like me who's hyper alert and hyper paying attention to everything, or the 180-degree different with his ADHD and not paying attention to anything and your mind going everywhere. There's two sides of the same coin. Is trauma of like not actually learning to pull it in the middle and just being present to it. It's just way too much. So you become super like this, or you are just way all over the place.
Yeah.
The heart is a different language to that. The heart holds that. The heart, as you said, beautiful, is like, oh God, really? Oh, you have to be so attentive because it was, or like, oh, you can't, you're so all over the place. Oh my God, it's that feeling.
Yeah.
And that love that we're looking for externally, it's really there all the time.
Yeah.
It just takes some sitting with, some discovery, some being present with. And again, I love what you're saying. It all comes back to the kindness. How can we be kind with each other?
Yeah.
The part of that inner compass, right, which is very confusing to us, especially these days in the world, I always want to say the West, but that has become the world, is the stillness. But the stillness, again, not in that kind of cruel way, but in the kind way that you really discovered yourself in your process, or I discovered more arduously than you, because I really had to get pummeled into it. I didn't have anyone around me. It was a very lonely experience for me, which is brutal. I mean, again, that it is what it is, but it's horrendous not to have allies through that. That part, one doesn't have to wait for this explosion. One can actually, again, sit with that. And if things don't feel right, something is off.
Yeah.
I'm not against medication. Sometimes the depression and anxiety is so profound, take medication. But again, as you said before beautifully, also just pay attention. Where is this coming from?
Yeah.
Is it just chemical? Is it this? Is it that? And how am I actually addressing it? And yes, they're great therapists. They can be very helpful. Psychology has been very helpful in my own experience.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't just that.
Yeah.
Spirituality can be very helpful. It's not just that.
Yeah.
So it's an invitation to have a different kind of experience.
Yeah.
Poetry is really helpful,
Mm-hmm.
right? And poetry has become, I remember as a very science-based guy back in the day, even though I had this profound experiences, kind of poetry seemed very strange to me in my teens. And then when I started having these experiences, I was like, wow, there's a roadmap in poetry. Because it's language, but it's not just language, it's feelings and guidance through this language, right? It was this really profound thing. So discovery of poetry was very profound for me. And me and you talked about Wagoner and his poem about this experience. I actually want to read that.
Yeah.
If that's okay.
Sure.
So David Wagoner was a guy who was raised in the Midwest, and then he moved to the Northwest in America. And if you don't know America, for your Italian viewers, the Midwest is sort of agrarian, kind of flat, looks monotone. And the Northwest, he was actually wrote this poem, if I remember correctly, when he actually had moved out there and was coming down the western coast from Canada into the US. And the Northwest is this incredible, lush forest. It's really like nowhere else in the world. It's very profound. So when I read this poem, I just want you to have that image. He says, "Stand still. The trees ahead and bushes beside you are not lost. Wherever you are is called here. And you must treat it as a powerful stranger. Must ask permission to know it and be known. The forest breathes. Listen. It answers. I have made this place around you. If you leave it, you may come back again, saying here. No two trees are the same to raven. No two branches are the same to wren. If what a tree or a bush does is lost on you, you surely are lost. Stand still. The forest knows where you are. You must let it find you. Stand still. The trees ahead and the bushes beside you are not lost. Wherever you are is called here. And you must treat it as a powerful stranger. Must ask permission to know it and be known. The forest breathes. Listen. It answers. I have made this place around you. If you leave it, you may come back again, saying here. No two trees are the same to raven. No two branches are the same to wren. If what a tree or a bush does is lost on you, you surely are lost. Stand still. The forest knows where you are. You must let it find you. And that stillness is what you came to, is what I came to. That stillness, that's where grace comes in. And that's a whole different door. We don't need to open it, but just to feel that, giving grace a chance. When I was going through my process that you went through, I was in so much pain, and this wonderful friend of mine wrote this calligraphy for me, and he said, give grace a chance, on this big piece of paper, and I had it. And I remember just being in the same place of turmoil you were, and crying and panic attacks, and we keep looking at that. It didn't make sense, but it made sense. Give grace a chance. What the hell does that mean? Give grace a chance. And I kept, and it became a koan. I would sit with it. Give grace a chance. Give grace a chance. That's what he's talking about here, the stillness, right? And just as a side note, nature is so powerful in this process. Very interesting. You were in a country, or I was in a country. Not that everyone can do this, but even if you're in a city, you go to a park, there's something about nature that connects us to this primordial connection, which is really us before the mind just took the control and ran the whole thing. There's something about that too.
Yeah.
And again, we do get found. There is a wisdom in the madness of the process. Certainly nothing that ego can wrap its head around. Certainly nothing it can control.
Yeah.
there something you want to say to that?
Yeah, yeah, and it really ties into what was one of my thoughts that came while I was taking notes for today's talk is what I would invite myself and anyone else to do is not superimpose what our idea of God or the divine is. Because to me, that's what faith is, allowing ourselves to surrender to whatever, surrender and allow the divine to carry us through whatever experience, and it might be different for each one of us. There's this saying, I don't know if it's taken from the Bible, but in Italian is, le vie del Signore sono infinite. The ways of the Lord are infinite.
That's beautiful.
So it's really about not wanting to control the God experience, the divine experience, and saying, oh, God is like that. This is how God works. This is the God speaking to me. It's really about surrender, let go. Allow yourself to surrender control and be carried. Trust, because I think that really ties into the heart as well, because that's where I feel intuition is. The compass, the inner compass, intuition and whatnot, it's all the same thing. If you allow yourself to trust your heart and follow your heart, you are being carried, you're being accompanied, you're on this river and you're safe. You will float.
Such a great definition of grace, what you just said. That's a definition of grace.
Okay.
Right? And again, it's like, yes, initially it's painful to get pummeled, and then it's actually quite delicious because, man, it's a lot of work trying to act as if you know where you have to drive this thing.
Yeah.
Right. We're on this train and we just take our baggage and we'll put it in the overhead bin. We don't need to carry it. We don't need to run around, get a engineering degree, how to engineer, run this train. It's like, just show up.
Yeah.
But to say just show up, it takes that whole process.
Yeah. And
all these archetypes and all these stories is about that, the hero's journey, going to the underworld and coming around. There's so much language around this. None of it really helps you when you're in the midst of it.
Yeah.
And then again, it's not that you come through it and then it's done, as you said beautifully before. It's a daily moment-to-moment practice. Like, here it is again. Oh, and then it just gets weaker and gets more faint and gets softer.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we don't then protect ourselves against life by armoring. We show up to it.
Yeah.
We show up to it. And one becomes more cognizant of behaviors that cause pain and certain people, and we start kind of self-correcting more gently. It's more of a gentle thing. Oh, this doesn't feel good. If I do this, it's this. Or if I'm watching 3 episodes of this, or something was going on. Not as punish. It's just a softness in it.
Yeah.
But there's also a flow.
Yeah.
You kind of have this sort of like softness, right? Again, the heart piece of like, oh.
Yeah. And it gets lighter, as you said. It's a relief. I work with many, throughout the years I've had many clients who are MDs, psychotherapists, neuropsychiatrists, and spiritual teachers. And, it's a relief to let go of having to know.
So good.
Just allow whatever your patient or client is experiencing to experience their own, divinity. Consider the possibility that divinity speaks to that person in a different way than yours, and you don't know what it is. So just help them understand how divinity is speaking to them, rather than telling them, oh, this is how it speaks and this is how it works. It's really, it's freeing, you don't have to know everything.
It's incredible.
You don't have to know everything. You just need to sit with people and recognize when, it's the intuition coming up and saying, yeah, that's it. Good. And it's
being
easy.
The witness. It's so 2 points to that, right? Those of us who really go into the head as a response to trauma. So we want to know that is a response to trauma. It's understanding, but also we want to control, right? So one of the things of being helpless as a child in whether perceived or abusive relationship with the people who are in charge of taking care of us, we get into a control mode. And one of the ways that people go into control is the head thing. They want to read, they want to understand, and can have a lot of useful tools. But as you said beautifully, then what ends up happening is you want to control things, you're not present to the moments. And the more you know, if you're paying attention, the less you know.
Mm-hmm.
So the more you actually understand. So this thing that you're saying is so profound. And, years of teaching, I would always point this out to my students, what's the secret? You know this? I was like, be present. It sounds so simple. Everyone wants a witness. If you actually are a witness to someone's experience, magic happens.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't mean whatever clinical knowledge someone like yourself or myself has picked up, they're very useful.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm going into my head and not being present, that's no use.
Mm-mm.
The most profound experience is that, right? It's like of actually really being present in the moment. Again, we keep saying these words. You really feel it when you're in the presence of someone who's doing that. And you also know it when someone's not doing that, even if you might not use these languages.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the most profound people, the most profound teacher, the most profound doctor, it's like you feel her. It's like, oh, she's here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not an anxious present. It's not like, oh my God, I got to fix this.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm just the next patient. I got to, make it's not that. It's like this soft, as you're doing right now,
Yeah.
as we're both doing. It's like this presence in front of someone.
Yeah.
But it's also not taking it on, because that also is unhealed wounds, which is very important for healers. And that actually makes the other person disempowered.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't give room for them.
Yeah.
Right. The whole thing about the difference between caretaking and caregiving.
Yeah.
Caretaking, even though it might look the same on the very surface, you're taking because
Mm-hmm.
you're not dealing with your stuff. The giving is what you said. This real presence.
Yeah.
It's real presence.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel we covered everything we wanted to talk about?
Yeah, I would say so.
Beautiful.
Mm-mm. Thank
Wonderful. Oh, thank you. Thank you for wanting to do this. I'm really happy we did this.
you. Yeah. Yeah. It was a long time
So
coming.
much love for you. So much love for you.
Likewise.
Yeah. Ciao, ciao, Bello.
Yeah. Take good care.
You too.
Ciao.
Will be. Bye.